Okay, we're live. Hey, everybody. Thanks for logging in. This is going to be a reading of chapter one of my novel. And part of the reason I'm doing this is it's kind of a way to make some more video content. I also do it because it's a little bit of a motivation to begin reading some of this that is completed. Um, but some of the stuff that I'm reading, I realize as I finish the novel, I tend to go back and make slight changes in previously written scenes to match everything up. So you have to understand you are listening to not a first draft, but a draft of this novel. May not reflect exactly the final product, but it's very, very close. So um, I've got my glass of water to keep my vocal cords well oiled. So let's get started. Mo awoke from the dream, but he knew it was not really a dream of his mind's creation. It was the mentor slipping another piece of the past into his conscious mind. Visions of a place he had never seen and featuring people he had never met. He regretted that this one had not shown him more of the little black-haired girl with her ebony skin as dark as his bone knives. She had appeared in several of the visions. There was something pleasing about her smile and the way she moved that he could not express, but felt all the same. Theron said that the coming of the visions proved that Mo had passed his eighth cycle. Even when children were given the family mentor before their eighth, which was uncommon where they had come from, the dreams did not start until the child's eighth cycle. Through the gap in the leaves above, Mo could see a sliver of the smaller moon peeking in at him. The larger moon was blocked out completely by the massive leaves overhead. It was time. He slid out from under his wolfskin blanket and felt for his pouch, hanging nearby. He had no need to dress, because he always slept in his wolfskin loincloth, and though summer was waning, he did not yet need his cloak for warmth. He wore nothing on his feet. The moons offered a dim light that cast the world in shapes and shadows. That light, combined with the glowing jellyfish in the pond below, was enough to move by, and Mo knew these trees well enough to move without light anyways. He pulled on his chest pouch and double-checked the straps. He unfastened the flap and ran his fingertips over the contents. The smooth hilts of his three bone knives protruded. He smiled at the sensation. A pocket housed his marking stone. He refastened the flap and reached under the cot for his buckler. It was a small, semi-round shield, carved from wood with a wolfskin wrapping sewn around it. Mo slipped his right arm into the leather straps and secured the buckler just below his elbow. That would keep it out of the way while he climbed. There was really no use for it without Theron around to throw things at him, but it had been pounded into his head to always wear it. The knives and buckler are a set, Theron had said. But he's not here to see either way, and it will be easier to climb without it. Mo slipped the buckler off and returned it under his cot. Their home was high up in the bole of a vine tree. Three, actually. These towering, woven trees grew straight up like pillars before splitting wide at the top into boles. Here the vines formed smaller shoots that curved out and up and over the bole to form a leafy canopy. This made the tree's boles naturally formed rooms with sparse walls, a space to escape the heat of the sun and the wet of the rains. He crossed to the edge of the tree's bole. His hand found the rope swing he had secured the day before. Normally, he would have jumped between trees, but he had to keep as quiet as possible, otherwise he would startle the Nuba. He twisted the rope around his left wrist, gripped it firmly in both hands, and swung out over empty space. If he fell, it was a long drop to the water below, assuming he didn't hit one of the massive roots of the trees. But he had crossed this gap so many times that he no longer felt any fear. His feet found and gripped the other tree's bole silently. He secured the rope to a branch and began his upward climb into the leaves. The leaves were fire red now. Soon they would fall, torn loose by the winter winds. Some of his earliest memories were of sleeping under a leaf as a blanket. It had covered his whole body then. If he tried it now, his legs would have stuck out. But he had wolfskins for blankets now, thanks to Theron's hunts. The climb was slow, but that was necessary to ensure that it was also silent. The Nuba would be below now, snatching fish from the pond for its meal before returning to the treetops to hide. He did not have far to go, but he must do so without a sound. That was important in order to hunt a Nuba. Their sharp hearing was their best defense against predators. At a distance, they would hear you coming and flee before you could get within range to throw. And this Nuba was particularly hard to kill. Mo had even injured him a few cycles before, but the Nuba had escaped and healed. It was a big one, and a mean looking one. Mo called it grim because the corners of its mouth turned downward. It always looked like it was frowning. He climbed upward, the woven branches growing thinner and more tightly packed with leaves. The branch beneath him was already swaying under his weight. There was a rush of wind, and his head broke out of the leaves. Open sky filled his vision. Now he could see the entirety of the larger moon, smiling down on him. Just at that moment, the small star arched across its face, a speck of silver against dirty yellow. Far off to the west, the silhouette of distant mountains called to him. He couldn't see them in this light, but there was a jagged edged blackness that had no stars in its face. This he knew was the mountain range. After today, I'll be free to go explore those mountains. Theron had promised that once Mo was proficient with his knives, he would leave their island of trees. The Nubas were the test. Theron said that when he and Mo had first come to the island, the Nubas had screamed and howled at them, warning them to leave, but soon after they took no notice of the two boys living with them in the trees. Then Theron had made Mo his first set of knives, 3 knives carved from wood. Theron instructed him to kill all the Nubas on their island of trees. Mo smiled to himself at the memory. He had been so young and naive. He assumed it would take him only a few days. It had taken him nearly half a cycle just to be able to throw the knives and hit a target that didn't move. Mo ducked back into the leaves and branches. He found the spot he had picked the day before and settled into a crook of tangled vines to wait. For a long time, there was no sound as the trees and the animals slept. Then the world began to awaken. The call of swoopers echoed across the pond. Swoopers were fast, sleek birds that nested high up at the very tops of the trees on the branches so thin that even Mo couldn't climb up there. There were little tree hoppers with their stubby wings that preferred to live low down in the trunks, eating beetles and swimming in the pond. But the forest floor, beyond the pond, was dominated by the wolves. Mo had seen a wolf once, far off on shore. At night their calls often echoed through the woods. They were the reason Mo had never been ashore in the forest. They were vicious predators, man-eaters. The Nuba would return soon. He unfastened his pouch flap, folding it back out of the way. He pulled the first knife out. Mo adjusted his grip on Fen. It had taken him 3 days of scraping the black animal bone across the face of stones to shape it into the blade he now called Fen. Fen was perfectly balanced, about the span of a man's hand, starting as a smooth, bulbous hilt that slimmed into a flattened, razor-edged point. The hilts of his other 2 knives, Weir and Hayes, protruded from the pouch, ready if the need arose. But Mo was confident that he would not need them. It had been many moons since he had missed his mark, since he had lost his previous Fen. Missing often meant losing the blade. If the blade didn't disappear into the dark recesses of the vine trees that formed the tree's mass, it fell into the pond below. And though the waters of the pond were crystal clear and great for swimming, its depths were formed by the tree's tangled root system, a maze of dark crevices and crannies. Even knowing where Fen had fallen had not helped. Mo could not hold his breath long enough to search the roots. Mo pushed the memory of losing that blade from his mind. That had happened only a few branches over from where he now sat. He swore this Fen would not suffer the same fate as its predecessor. A familiar scrambling, scraping sound came up from below. He peered down. Grim was scrambling upward, a dripping fish clenched in his jaws. Mo smiled. He was perfectly positioned. Now he must just wait for Grim to reach him. Nubas were furry creatures with short legs and torsos, but long arms. Their hands and feet each had 4 fingers and a thumb, perfect for gripping the woven vines of the trees. Their heads were elongated with a wide mouth populated with sharp teeth and 2 fangs. Grim moved with an effortless agility, stopping now and then to sniff the air and listen. He had not sensed Mo yet. Mo pulled his feet under himself and slowly stood, his eyes watching the Nuba. He had to be ready. There would be only one chance. Excuse me. Mo took one careful step out onto the branch before him, testing its strength before putting his full weight on it. His right hand gripped a supporting vine overhead. Left hand held his knife, eyes locked on his prey. Still, Grim ascended, oblivious to Mo's presence. Mo had tried to kill Grim before. Though he had wounded it once back when he was using wood knives, it had escaped death. The wound had not been lethal, and the noob had scampered away to hide and heal. Now it seemed more cautious, especially when Theron was around. With the noise of Theron moving around in their camp, scraping and curing his wolf skins, it was impossible, because the noise kept the Nuba tense and flighty. Grim was nearly level with Mo now, when he stopped, head swiveling around, body throbbing in pants. Mo froze. He had not made a sound, but now that he was so close, there was a risk of the creature's dull eyes detecting his movement. Mo held his breath, waiting. The Nuba turned and scrambled up the branch, ducking in and out of sight. Mo slid out further onto his branch, turning his body, positioning himself for the throw. He was in a good spot. He just needed the Nuba to be in a good position, with enough dense branches beneath the creature to catch its dead body. Otherwise, the creature's corpse would carry Fen to the bottom of the pond with it. There was a wide fork in the branch above the Nuba, and near to Mo, a good spot for the kill. Mo cocked his wrist, slowly moving his arm back in an arc beside his body. He would have to do a flat throw, not the typical over the shoulder, because the mass of leaves crowding his head and shoulders made that impossible. The flat, horizontal throw was a riskier form, harder to aim with and tough to give much power to, but he had been practicing it ever since the dismal loss of Fen. A long-necked swooper called out, startling Mo and Grim. The swooper plunged down between them, dodging branches, head first, wings folded. It hit the surface of the water far below. In the growing light, Mo could just see the curving trail of bubbles forming beneath the water's surface. A moment later, the Nuba emerged. A moment later, the swooper emerged, fish in beak. Mo turned his attention back to the Nuba, away from the swooper gobbling its meal below. The Nuba turned and scrambled upwards towards the fork. Mo drew in a breath and held it, willing his heart to slow. The Nuba swung around the backside of the branch, out of sight. Wait. Mo imagined the throw. He had practiced very hard to keep his blades from flipping end over end. The point should always face the prey, Theron had said. The Nuba reemerged, reached the fork, and Mo snapped his arm forward, wrist flicking, releasing the blade. Fen shot out of his hand, point first, perfect form. Grim sensed the motion. His legs snapped straight, propelling his body up and away in a last desperate leap for safety. Fen stabbed into its chest, penetrating the beast's heart. Blood spurted out around the knife handle. The fish slipped from the Nuba's jaws, but Grim's leap was already in motion. The strength of his leap dampened by the death blow, but not altogether foiled. And in an instant, Mo knew the Nuba's leap would fail, and it would fall to the pond below with Fen embedded in its chest. Mo leapt out toward the limp body of the Nuba, hands outstretched, giving no heed to the drop to the pond's surface far below. His fingers found the Nuba's hair and clenched, but the hair was too short, and the weight of the Nuba and the motion of its body tore it out of Mo's grasp. Mo twisted in the air and in one last desperate motion grabbed at the Nuba's tail. The fingers of his left hand closed around it, and the Nuba's body jerked towards Mo. Now Mo was falling, trailing the Nuba behind him. His right hand snapped out, found a branch of the vine tree. His feet instinctively met the smooth vertical surfaces of the tree, and with a jerk, Mo was hanging from the tree, looking down at the dead Nuba hanging beneath him. When he had pulled the beast up onto a branch, he carefully pulled Fen free. He wiped off the Nuba's blood on a leaf. He examined the Nuba, exulting the kill, the final kill. There was no more Nubas. It was done. Finally, after so many years, he had killed all of them. He would be allowed to leave the island. Mo crouched down on the branch and pulled his marking stone out of his pouch. There were many marks scratched into the face of Fen, each indicating a kill Mo had made with that knife. All his knives had them. Using the stone, Mo etched another mark into Fen's hilt, then replaced the stone in his pouch. He sat, admiring the marks. It was the same number of kills as his last blade, his last Fen. One more kill, and this would be his best blade ever. Now Theron would have to let him leave the island and go to the mountains. Far off, he heard the gentle swish of an oar in the water and looked out over the pond. Theron was paddling his little coracle back from the shore. Theron was always in high spirits when he returned from the hunt with a wolfskin. It would be the perfect time to make his argument. He was ready to go ashore. He was ready to go to the mountains. The blades proved it. He tied the forearms of the Nuba together and threw the creature onto his back, its arms around his neck. Come on, Grim. The adventure is about to start. Mo leapt off the branch and began his downward climb. Thus ends the reading of Chapter 1. Thanks for listening in, Christopher. Hope you got to hear all that live. If not, once I kick off here, it's easy enough to go back and re-listen to it. So appreciate your time. Appreciate you listening. Leave any comments below what you thought. And if you've got more poignant criticisms, feel free to email me. You can email me at ben@bencries.com and let me know what you thought. Thank you so much. Goodbye.